everybody, it's Kenzy Knoxx and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be painting this How to Paint Little Red Riding Hood painting in acrylic, and it should be super fun and relaxing, so sit back, relax, and let's start painting. So to begin off with, I did a time-lapse version of the forest because this is something we typically do, or is typical, very easy to do. So basically I started off with some phthalo blue and painted in the sides to make it really dark and to draw the viewer's eye inward, and then I took some turquoise and drew in some trees, followed by mixing some yellow and turquoise to make grass green and filling in the grass on the side of the pathway. I then took lemon yellow and filled in the pathway and covered it with fluorescent yellow, and then on the sides of the stairwell I tapped in with a 1-inch mop brush some texture using that grass green shade, as well as adding a little white to the grass green to make it a light mint green color. I then went ahead and painted in the trees using violet, and then I took that same 1-inch mop brush and tapped in some foliage using violet as well. So now we're back to the regular time version of the painting. So after the forest is painted, we can now fill in the foliage, and this will be in real time, and then paint in the Little Red Riding Hood. With the foliage, you want to tap in enough that it creates like a dark color around the top of the canvas to create like a vignette-like effect. However, you do want to leave spaces to let that phthalo blue and that turquoise to show through, and also that yellow and white that was used in the center, that fluorescent yellow and white color. I also have another tutorial that is going to be coming out soon that is almost exactly like this, and it is the forest painting, so you can follow along with that video in order to learn how to paint the forest in more detail. But once you're done tapping in your foliage in the dark purple, you can mix in some sap green with the purple and use that color as well to shade in some of the darker foliage. That's what I did here. Continue tapping in your foliage until you're completely satisfied with the way that it looks. And I'm also going to add some branches on top of the foliage that will be showing through the foliage, so we'll be seeing some branches as well on top of the leaves that we're drawing in or tapping in. Now that we're done with the darker shade of green and violet, we're going to take olive green and start tapping in some foliage where we think some highlights might be. We're going to add several shades of green to this, including light olive green and brilliant yellow green, I believe it's called, and even yellow too. Now we're tapping in light olive green to highlight some of the areas further. And you can keep tapping in the foliage as much as you please. Just remember not to cover everything. And I would keep it towards the ends of the bushes, if that makes sense. The ends of the tree trunk, or not the tree trunks, the branches, where the foliage would catch the sunlight, essentially. And once you're done with the light green or light olive green, we're going to tap into some brilliant yellow green and tap in some further highlights, just on the ends of the branches mainly. Once you're done highlighting your trees, you can let that dry and then determine if you want to add additional foliage, which I decided to add some additional foliage over in this little area. Once I decided I had added enough foliage in the dark green shade or sap green shade, I then went over it with the light olive green and added some highlights to it. I then tapped into the brilliant yellow green, or even just yellow. Lemon yellow also works. You can tap that in to add some highlights as well. Since acrylics dry darker than when they're applied, you may have to go over them several times in order to show the brightness of the highlights, but it's up to you. Tapping into some lemon yellow, I'm now adding just some yellow to the leaves to add a further highlight to them. And once you're done with your foliage, we can now begin on the Little Red Riding Hood using some black and violet color. So now I'm just tapping in, or I'm painting in her legs. So you may want to make these a little bit narrower than I did. I then went in and fixed them afterwards, but draw in two legs. This is basically going up to the knee, so you can base it on how tall you want your Red Riding Hood to be. So you can see here I went back in and adjusted the size of the legs to make them thinner, but I still want them the same height. Since I want to create the illusion as if she's walking, I'm making one leg purposely shorter than the other, as well as slightly angled. I'm not sure if this will completely catch what I'm trying to draw or paint in, but I'm hoping that it will. Taking that same color of black and violet, I'm now painting in the backside of the cape. So if you can imagine, she's kicking up the cape with the back of her leg, and so it's wafting it upwards. So we're just creating a semicircle here that where the gown will be rounded up in the back, and then it'll be gathered towards the front as well as gathered in the back. So just focus on the shapes that I'm painting if you can. Take it step by step. You can pause the video if needed or fast forward it if needed as well, depending on how quickly or slowly you paint. While painting this, I took some crimson red as well as primary red and fluorescent red to paint in the different colors and shadows and depths of the color that I was trying to capture in the cape. So just play around with those colors, figure out which one's darkest. It should be the crimson red and your bright reds, and then your neon reds too for the further highlights. And I'm just drawing in some lines right now that will be highlights of where the gown will be pulled, and you can imagine that it would be rippled in some areas. So you want the rippled parts to be highlighted, and then we'll create the shadows of them. So every highlight needs a shadow or a low light. And now I'm painting in her shoulder area, so we need that area highlighted with that primary red or scarlet red shade. And then we're painting in the left side of her cape. And keep in mind the height of the figure that you want it to be and adjust it accordingly. So remember that the cape is starting at her knee height. You have to imagine she'd have thighs and a waist and shoulders. So you'd want the gown to probably, or the cape to be at least almost 3 times the height of the knees. So, well, in total. So you're talking about the top of the head. So that hooded area that we haven't painted in yet will be probably 2/3 the height, or total will be take up 2/3 the height of the figure. So now I'm painting in some shadows using black and violet. And now taking some fluorescent red, I am now adding some highlights along the right side of the cape, as that's where the sunlight is coming from and it will be the brightest and most highlighted area. Continue mixing in the different red shades depending on where you want them to be the brightest and darkest, and then continue in with the black and violet shades to create the shadows of the figure that you're trying to create or capture. So just imagine just how the cape would ripple and just recreate that in your head. I played around with these shades for quite a while. You can try to follow along with me, but you can just scroll to the end to just figure out or just see what I ended up with and try to copy that as well, or you can try to follow along. So now I'm going to try to paint in the hood of the cape. So going in with some primary red or bright red, I'm just painting in the part of the cape that would be sitting on top of the shoulders, but there's going to be a piece of the hood that caves back under towards the shoulders, and that part will be shadowed. So keep that in mind, that you want some of the hood in color and some of it shadowed with that violet and black color. If you notice, I keep going over the right side with that fluorescent red because I keep losing it, either because I'm adjusting the cape or adjusting the colors. But yeah, you really want that right side to be highlighted with that fluorescent red, and you may have to use several coats of it just to make it stand out more, because it will dry darker than when it first applied. Once I felt I was semi done with the cape, I decided to take fluorescent yellow and white and highlight the areas between her legs and the path that would be right in front of her, because I really wanted her to be to stand out from the pathway in the forest itself. Once I was done with the shadowing and the highlighting of the figure that we painted, there's Little Red Riding Hood, I decided to draw in the shadows using violet. And so I'm just painting in the legs right now, and then the shadow of the figure down the stairs. Taking fluorescent yellow, I then highlighted the pathway as well as the stairs that were not shadowed. I then decided to add some foliage to the twigs that were to her left. So tapping in some sap green and some olive green and some light green or light olive green, as well as some brilliant yellow, green yellow, and some lemon yellow itself. I added in the foliage. And once I was done with the foliage, I decided to add some twigs on the top of the canvas coming down towards the figure. Each of the twigs or sticks that I'm drawing in are all aimed towards Little Red Riding Hood, as if they're going towards her. I just felt like that would add something to the painting itself. I then debated on adding in some orange or light orange leaves or foliage and decided not to ensure that the Little Red Riding Hood would stand out more. But as you can see, I added some white and orange to some of the flowers, which I later changed to violet and light blue violet, so you can skip ahead on this step, ignore this step. I decided it took away too much from the figure, so I wanted to redo that part. I then took some violet to further shadow in the areas on the outside of the canvas to make it more like a vignette, and so, or vignette. So I took some violet and just scumbled in some areas for deeper shadowing. I then took some of the green colors that I previously used and just lightened up some of the leaves more, or made them stand out more. I then decided to add in some ferns using a mint green shade. It was at this point that I decided to change the orange to light blue violet and brilliant violet, or brilliant purple, I'm sorry. And so I just added light blue violet and then to where the orange was, and then added brilliant purple to the middle of the blue violet shade, just to make some sort of floral arrangement within the painting, but not to take away from the red or the orange hues that are in Little Red Riding Hood. And so that wraps up our painting, and I hope you enjoyed this YouTube tutorial. And if you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So until next time, I'll see you guys later. Okay, bye!